Hi my beautiful people, and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a little bit more of a sit down chatty video because I just wanted to talk through my engineering journey, all the things that no one talks about with the semester coming to a start, and a lot of people are going to be picking what they want to do with uni, and there's going to be a lot of young people starting their engineering career. I just want to be able to provide my story, and if one person can learn from it and gain a little bit of knowledge, then like my job is done. So let's get into it. So I am actually going to an engineering event this evening, so I'm going to be just doing a little bit of a get ready with me while we chat. So I'm going to start with just like a little bit of skin prep. I already washed my face this morning, but it's very hot today, so I'm feeling greasy, so I'm just going to do that kind of while I talk about the first part of all of this, which I guess was like the dream. Why did I choose engineering? And the simple answer of it all is I was good at maths and science in high school. That is it in its simplest form. But more than that, I've always been quite interested in a lot of those aspects of construction, and I think growing up it was very much one of those things where I was like, oh, I was a tomboy. I loved Thomas the Tank Engine and Bob the Builder and all of that sort of stuff. So like, yeah, very pick me of me. But I was like 5. I didn't know what being a pick me was, alright? That's just my personality, so let me be. But yeah, I guess I was always fascinated by that, and my dad growing up, he's always been an electrician, so I watched him work in trades, and that was something I was always quite interested in. So it always just felt like a natural progression for me to go from all those trades aspects that I liked, but I was good at school. I was very, very good at high school, and I always had it in my mind that not going to university would be a waste of my potential. Which my opinion on that has changed, definitely. I definitely think there are a lot of successful people and smart people, and you do not need to go to university in order to like maximize that potential. But that's kind of why I started with that. And I think I had this idea since like quite a young age, and from the beginning of, definitely from the beginning of high school, but even back in intermediate, I did all the robotics classes, I took the hard materials classes. I was very much into all of that sort of stuff because I was fascinated by the process of creating something, and not just like solving the problem on paper, but actually, coming up with those solutions in reality. I think one of my favorite things in high school, and definitely something that probably shaped my decision towards engineering the most, would have been something called ePro 8. If I have photos, I will put some on. But I did this all throughout high school, and it was an engineering and maths competition, and I just thrived. It was one of those things where I just felt I could use my intelligence in a non-traditional way, because that is how I've always seen myself and my ability and everything. And it was just one of those things where I got to incorporate academic learning and problem solving and teamwork, because that's also always been such a big part of my personality, and another reason why I didn't necessarily want to go into like a trade, because I love people and I love the idea of being able to work my way up in a business and do that aspect of things. I look so greasy right now because it's so hot in here, and I just filmed a whole bunch of stuff and it didn't record. So I'm gonna go back. I've done my skincare, all of it, and my skin is prepped and ready. So we're gonna get back on with the program, and hopefully I don't miss anything. Okay, I really cannot believe that I lost content, but I'm glad I realized now and not later. Anyway, regardless, I'm gonna get on with my eyebrows. And now we are gonna talk a little bit more about the reality. We've heard the dream, the idea why I went into engineering versus the initial reality of it. Now, as I already said, I was good at school. I was in academic extension programs, I was house leader, I was an environmental leader, I played sport at a good level. I just was relatively gifted and talented. And with that comes the inevitable burnout for a lot of us. So I went from being, at the top of my game, I still went to a big school, but like so small compared to uni. And being, good at what I did and being able to be recognized for that. And then I went to uni and it just was not the case. I was no longer in the top. I sat very mediocrely in the middle, potentially even lower down than that in some aspects, because the world is just so much bigger than high school, which obviously it sounds silly and it's like, why would you think it isn't? But I just freaked a little bit. And it was first time for a lot of people, it will be the same as well, living out of home, not being with your parents, and also experiencing that other aspect of university that they always tell you. They're always like, oh, high school is so different to university, you gotta get your stuff together. Not in the way they say. I think they used to always say, oh, you can't be late, this won't fly in university, you can't do this, you can't do that. The problem is, you can do whatever you want. At uni, no one is holding your hand. No one is checking on you if you're struggling. If you don't get it and you don't let people know, you're going to get left behind. Because if you don't turn up to lectures and you don't put the work in, no one's going to know. It's just not, it's not anyone else's business, and you have no one following up on you. And that definitely makes a big difference. It's never something I thought would be a big deal. I thought I was quite self-driven and motivated, but something about not having to go to class every day and practice a skill over and over again with something like engineering. Practice is your bread and butter. I'll get into all of that in a bit, but just not having anyone, I guess, monitoring me, and also trying to navigate the fact that I was living out of home for the first time, trying to be a big adult. I didn't need my parents. I didn't need to reach out for help, which in hindsight is something I wish I did so much sooner. I genuinely wish I had stopped trying to be a big girl and work it all out on my own and actually talk to people. There are processes, there are people who are willing to help you, and I just wasn't. I thought I was too good for that. So that's definitely like, I think I'm just going to throw in some like tips and tricks, and I might put them in the description so that they're like easy little reminders for you to have. But yeah, that would probably be one of my biggest first tips, is do not suffer in silence. On any aspect of university and any degree, if it's in the people you live with in your hall, if you're struggling with, there's so many things you could struggle with, talk to someone. Because I think so many of my problems could have been sorted out so much sooner if I had just, spoke out about them. Okay, the next thing I kind of want to talk to, which I've already touched on a bit, is my academic struggles. Engineering is not easy. A lot of university courses are not easy in the actual content that is being taught. I think especially if you did an NCA program and not Cambridge, you will find it to be challenging. Not to scare you and not to say that you can't do it, because you so are. You're so capable, and it's something that so many people do end up doing. It's something that we can all do, and I've watched so many of my friends graduate recently, and I just know, like, people can do it. But it doesn't change the fact that the content is hard, and especially for something like engineering, you need to practice. You need to practice, and you need to learn the content. That is like my second big tip. You need to learn the content and not just focus on, you know, passing assignments or, you know, just getting the test content learned. Like, you need to actually understand the concepts, because if you don't, and that's exactly what happened, I did not understand some things in first year and I was too nervous to kind of reach out, and I continued to struggle and I kind of continued to just drag myself along. And the problem was with that, it got to a point where I couldn't drag myself anymore. And I was struggling to, you know, stay on top of the content. And everything you learn does build on each other. Everything builds on something you've already learned. So if you're not taking that time to like learn your fundamentals, there's going to be breakdown later on. Now, where my real issue came in, and something that I think is almost potentially bigger than just this video, and something that I would probably like to do a whole separate thing on in the future, is dealing with my mental health, and especially with my anxiety. I have suffered with anxiety since about year 11. And in high school, during COVID and during that period of my life, I found it hard, but it was always something that was a bit more manageable because my classrooms were smaller. I was able to have a really good relationship with my teachers, my counselors, all of that sort of stuff. So I just was able to, I guess, be understood and have things in place. Also, don't mind me, it's so hot. It is so sweaty. It is. Oh. Now, where this anxiety got really bad was in traditional testing and exams. Now, again, this was something that I had struggled with in high school, but it was not as much pressure and I didn't find the content as difficult, so it was never as bad for exams. However, when I got to university, I severely struggled. My anxiety had just ramped up, I think also based on just being out of home, dealing with all the other fun things that you deal with when you're, you know, in your teens. All the other stresses and anxieties that you're having in your life just did spread into my academic. So I failed papers. And I feel like those close to me know that. And those that aren't necessarily super close to me know that I failed a couple. I don't think people realize just how many. And this is one of those things where I'm at the point now where I'm comfortable talking about it because I know that my reasonings is because of the way I learn and everything, and I needed support, but I struggled and I failed papers, and that ended up causing me to be behind. So I have been fighting for so long being on the back foot, and that is genuinely why when I say you need to learn the content and learn, like, pick up on when you don't know stuff, because it's a lot easier to be struggling at the right pace. You kind of know what I mean. Than to be getting behind and struggling when you're behind, because that is a whole nother ball game. That having to try get it all together, and when you're a couple of classes behind, and that means you can't move forward in your next class and then your next class, and it just added up. It was one of those things where I thought that I could get back to where I needed to be really, really quickly, and unfortunately I couldn't. I just couldn't. I think the only way I'm gonna be able to go out in this heat successfully, oh hey Luna, is if I do a slick back, which is kind of annoying because my hair is really clean, but it's too hot and muggy and it's just gonna go everywhere. Anyway, So I experienced, obviously, this failing of exams. And what ended up happening is it broke my confidence. And I'm quite a proud person. That's something that I won't lie about. I am quite a proud person and I like to pretend I have everything together. I've always been like that. And I know it's a weakness of mine, thinking that I am perfectly fine when I'm just not, and being very unwilling to ask for help because I don't want people to know that I'm struggling. So that's what was happening. I was disheartened that I had failed papers that my friends had passed when I had gone to the lectures and I had put as much effort in as them, for me to just have a panic attack on the day. You know? It was one of those things where it felt so out of my control, and like I was putting in everything and the world was just not rewarding me. So after my confidence was broken and I just felt like I wasn't good enough, and I really, really had thoughts about whether I wanted to continue or not. But for me also, it was never ever like really a thought of not continuing. I was far too stubborn at the idea of not finishing something that I had started. To me, that would have felt like a failure, and I am not into failure. Which again, and something else that I have changed my perspective on slightly as I've gotten older, but you know, hearsay. But this is when it went downhill because I was not willing to accept help from anyone because I was too embarrassed. So what I kept trying to do was kept trying to push forward at the exact same speed that I was going. So what ended up happening here is I got further and further behind. I tried to do everything. I failed in summer school, which just meant I was overwhelmed because I also decided to work full time. I have always had an issue with trying to do too much, and I always like to say yes. And it has definitely kept me from potentially succeeding and reaching my goals sooner because I kept trying to do everything instead of just ticking off a few things at a time. Now, I got to the end of my first year and I was granted an internship. And this is something that I'm very, very grateful for because I was lucky enough to know someone who was willing to give me an email, which was able to give me an interview, and one thing led to another, so very much was able to get my foot in the door because my grades definitely weren't. And working with this company has been one of the most like amazing things ever. I do want to also do a video. This whole video is plugs on another video, you couldn't tell, but I do really want to do a video talking about my actual experience working in engineering, being a woman in engineering, all of those other aspects. So if that is something you would like to see, do let me know. But working in a company and being able to see what I did on a day-to-day, and nothing about what I did on a day-to-day was like an exam. There was not a single time where I would be presented with a problem and they would want me to solve it completely on my own in silence with no notes, because that's just not how the real world is. And I understand why exams need to be done that way and to test people's knowledge and all of that. But just seeing that I could do the real life job was just one of those moments where I was like, oh, I can do it. And I feel as if I thrived in that. And that has definitely been a turning point in my degree, where I was able to, you know, realize that just because I wasn't necessarily academically there, it didn't mean I wasn't capable. Unfortunately, we are I'm going into my 4th year of studying and I'm still not very close to graduating, which is quite a interesting feeling considering most of my friends have already graduated, and then all my engineering friends will be graduating this year. So watching people be ahead of you is it's like a humbling experience, but almost not in a way that pushes you. It very much disheartens you, at least for me. I definitely felt way more disheartened than, I guess, pushed to achieve my goal watching other people succeed in their degree. But I just knew after doing the internship that I could do it, and that I just needed to find a way to do it. Now, this is unfortunately where the story gets a little bit sad, and okay, well, that makes it sound like someone died, but this is where it gets to the point of me trying to fix it, and I finally asked for help, and unfortunately it was not received very well. So I don't want this to be something that deters you from speaking out and talking to someone. And I hope it's something that gets better as time goes on, but unfortunately I have spent the past complete year trying to get my academic situation understood. It is so sweet. I just smudged my mascara. Trying to get my academic situation understood, trying to get the other of my diagnoses and all of that sort of stuff sorted, get my special conditions, because that was another thing I was not willing to do, because I felt like special conditions were only for people who had very intense things, when in reality those special conditions are there for those who need it, and people need them for different reasons. Some people need them for learning disabilities, some people need them for their mental health, some people I assume might need them for their physical disabilities, reader writers, all of that sort of stuff. So I was finally able to get those approved, and that definitely has helped. But I have been fighting for so long to get all of that done, and now that I am finally there, I definitely have a new sense of, I guess, confidence in myself. I feel as if this video might have just been a lot of yap, a lot of it. And it might not mean anything to you guys, but I guess really what it is I kind of want to start doing some more videos like these of just sharing my side of things, and I would love to, if this does well, talk about a lot more of these things in depth, kind of see what resonates with people, because I think there is so much room on the internet to share success, but I think we need to talk maybe more about some of the hard things. And I feel like I have dealt with a lot of hard things, and I was not willing to talk about them, and also very much had the mindset of my problems aren't big enough, and everyone's problems are big enough. Doesn't mean you have to belittle other people's problems, but it's just finding a way to understand your journey doesn't have to be the same as everyone else's journey. And I am still so far away from graduating, it feels, but I'm also so far ahead in so many other aspects of life. And that sounds so like, oh, look at me looking at the glass half full instead of half empty, but I have learned a lot of skills from these struggles that if I had just done well, I would not have learned. I do believe that my determination and resilience is something that I've learned. With all that being said, this is the finished look. It is definitely, she's dewy because it's so hot, but I need to hurry up and get changed, and then head to this thing tonight with my engineering team and just have it be a moment where I can sit and reflect and remember that just because I'm not where some people are doesn't mean I'm not exactly where I need to be. So goodbye, my beautiful people. I love you so much. Please like this video and subscribe if you're not, and I will see you next time.